Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you. Okay. I never know how to start these things. Oh, that's me. These are the slides, and this is everybody. Okay, everybody. You're not supposed to actually see this slide. This is my test slide. And I put it up here to get a sense of how my slides are actually going to show up. So it's very important to know that you are presenting the right slide. I am presenting Stables and Volatiles, and I'm at Web Expo, right? Okay, good. All right. You've got the four corners of the screen. You can see what the color looks like. Each color, we're getting a little washed out here because we got these big yellow lights here. Also, the cropping, not great because you can see it's kind of cropped there. But most importantly, is my typeface installed? One of those is text. The other one is the actual typeface. If those don't equal each other, we don't have Futura, and that would be bad, and I'd be sad. Stables and Volatiles is the name of the talk. And it starts with this. Humans are bad. Look at this. This is a plug. This is the different plugs that we have around the world. And you will notice that they are all completely different. What this does, to be super clear, is it takes power from the wall and puts it to your device. It does exactly the same thing, and we have a huge amount of different plugs here. What is going on? Now, there's a story around each of these plugs. The one from the UK has a certain design because when they were redesigning the plug, they didn't have a lot of copper. So there's a story, but what is going on here? It gets worse. This is how those different plugs are being used around the world. Fun fact for you today, here in Prague, in El Salvador, they use 10 different plugs, which means if you're going to go over and you're going to visit your friend Bob in El Salvador and you want to plug something in, you got to bring 10 plugs. This is crazy. But that's a lot of plugs. Maybe we should talk about just one plug. Actually, this is wrong. Maybe 2 plugs. Wait, hold on. Maybe 3 plugs. This is the headphone jack for this. We'll talk about that. I want to talk about the decisions that go into plugs. I want to talk about the humans, the different types of humans that you pull together to make these sorts of decisions. I want to talk about stables and volatiles. As we said at the beginning, my name is Michael Lopp. I write this blog. On the internet, I'm called Rands. Rands is my wife's maiden name. I wrote these 2 books. We already talked about this. Managing Humans. If you're leading teams and you want to read a book that's going to speak to you as an engineer, which is a good time to ask. Engineers, raise your hands. Okay, about a third. Designers, raise your hands. Okay, about a third. Let's see, who am I forgetting? Product managers. Let me see what's going on there.
Excuse me, Michael.
Yeah.
Sorry, I apologize. I forgot to say one important thing.
Yeah.
Right after we finish with your presentation, we're going to take questions from you guys in an interview. So if you do want to pose a question, please log on at slido.com and use the code WebExpo and select Lucerna Great Hall. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, go on.
Okay, last one. Any lawyers in the room? No? Okay, good. You're a lawyer right there? Are you really a lawyer? Are you a lawyer? Really? Half a lawyer? What does that mean? Okay. As we said at the beginning, I've worked at a couple of different companies, Palantir, Pinterest, Slack. I'm currently the VP of engineering there. How many people use Slack? Oh, yeah. All right, I'm done. Thank you very much. We're going to talk about some other companies here. I've also worked at... Borland. Borland? I always want to know. How many of you remember Borland? Yeah, okay, good. All right, you're my people. This is good. Netscape, a startup. Netscape? Wow, really? That startup that you've never heard of? Anyone? No? Okay, good. Apple? Anyone heard of Apple? No one raises their hand. That's hilarious. Or really bad news for me. So there's some things I want to talk about to kind of frame this talk. There's some things that I say that are relevant to this talk we're about to give here. I'm one of these firm believers that in your career, you're in a hurry. You've got to be always thinking, you said in my intro, I'm worried about staying relevant. I'm always looking at what is the next thing that I want to learn about. This is super important to me. It's one of my defining values. The other thing is that my belief is your current job has an expiration date. You are, right now, sitting here 3 years away from switching jobs. And the reason I know this is I've been seeing resumes for years, thousands and thousands of resumes, and engineers, these builders, we seem to be jumping between jobs about every 3 years. My wife knows this because she, about every 2 years or so, we're having a chat, and I'm talking with her, and I sit there and I go, you know, honey, I'm a little bored. And she goes, gray. She goes, oh shit. Not this again. We're going to have to have a new job and do all these new things. But this is the thing about being in high tech. All of this new technology, all of these Slack, Pinterest, Palantir, all these different companies, we're constantly inventing the future. I believe you want to constantly be working on something and growing yourself. I also believe that the first thing, how many of you have built a 1.0 product before? Thought it up and delivered it. 1.0 products. About a tenth of you. Was it fun? It was fun? Did you finish? Because it's really hard. 1.0, I'm glad you did. Good job. 1.0 is usually this thing that's so hard to get out the done. It's something that's really hard, and it's going to kill you, is my belief, meaning that it's really hard. I want to talk a little bit about disruption because this is where the stables and volatiles play a lot. This is the Silicon Valley, Santa Clara. In, I don't know, the 50s or 40s or 50s or so. It's, how many people? I don't know how many people were there. What we did there was we created this thing called a transistor, and it actually turned into this. 1,854 square miles, 3 million souls. We have an incredible nerd density and a very unique culture. And I want to talk a little bit about where that culture came from. How many of you know the name William Shockley? William Shockley. Anyone? You know who he is? Okay, I'm not going to put you on the spot. You want to be put on the spot? Who is he? I'll tell you. William Shockley is the reason we're sitting here right now. He's the inventor of the transistor. How many transistors are in the room right now? Billions. Trillions. There's a lot of transistors. The thing about William Shockley is that he invented the transistor and got a Nobel Prize for it. So then he went to Palo Alto and he started a company in a garage, just like all companies apparently do. The thing attracted this amazing talent because they wanted to hang out with this guy who invented the transistor. And the thing about him was he was a bad manager. He was actually a horrible human being. He was actually a racist. He was this awful person. His management style and his erratic behavior led these first 10 people, these first 10 engineers that came to work with him, they left. The traitorous eight. They left, and they went to go start all of the companies you know about, Fairchild Semiconductor, Intel, AMD. These all came from this one group of engineers who really didn't like this guy. And they didn't like him so much, they decided to say, we don't want to be anything like him. So they said, hey, we're going to build a brand new culture. We're going to say, this business suit culture, we don't want anything to do with this. They got rid of titles. They got rid of dress codes. They got reserved parking lots. They got everyone in the same room, open workspaces. And this was the beginning of an egalitarian workplace. But the thing about this, the thing about William Shockley, who is not someone worth knowing, not someone worth honoring, is he was a volatile. And he's the reason, the reaction to him is he's the reason there's a lot of flip-flops in the Silicon Valley, that it's just about kind of easygoing, results-based attitude. They said, listen, we don't want to have hierarchy. We don't want to have all of these layers of management. At Apple, the teams that Steve cared about the most, it was 3 layers. It was Steve, VP, senior engineer, senior manager, manager of the people. That's 3 layers. It sounds like a lot, but like IBM, like 17 layers deep. They knew that the flat organization would accelerate the flow of information and foster the intellectual process. Other things that came out of this sort of initial set of companies: speed. With that free-flowing information, you get faster decisions, and you get products that get to market faster. Collaboration. This is why I'm at Slack right now, because all of my values are inside of this company and this product. So we call that synergy. But the other thing is, they know with flat organization, without all of this status, you get better collaboration. Anyone can go and talk to anyone. You don't have to be like, oh, you're the VP of engineering, I can't talk with you. You keep it flat. You make sure that things can move around. And results orientation. This is, I think, one of the defining characteristics of engineers. It's not who you are, it's what did you build? The informal dress code is a byproduct of these values. We engineers place a premium on results. What did you do? What value did you create? At Palantir, there was this thing called the second test. And what it was, and I figured it out, it was something that organically showed up. Getting hired was the first test, which was really hard. We had a very high hiring bar at Palantir. The second test was, do you go identify a problem and fix it on your own without anyone telling you to do it? And until you did that, we didn't quite trust you, because we didn't know if you were truly a builder, if you're truly a risk taker. Silicon Valley, high tech, I would argue, has a high tolerance for risk. 1 in 10 startups in the Silicon Valley are unsuccessful. 1 out of 10 are successful, so 90% of them fail. If I told you right now, there's a 90% chance you're gonna walk out of the building and get hit by lightning, you would stay in the building. 90% chance, I'm probably gonna get hit. But we have all of these companies, these engineers, these 1.0 folks who just go and start this because they want to go figure out what it's like. They want to go build a thing. They embrace failure because failure is a great way to learn. This is my favorite shot from Palantir. Anyone know who this is? Kasparov. He's playing speed chess against the entire Palantir engineering team. So this table comes out here, it goes over here, and it goes around, and he's just going around and doing moves, and he's kicking our ass. We were just getting waxed. It wasn't even funny, because he's a grandmaster at speed chess. Of course he's gonna be good at this. But the thing I love about this photo is look in the back. That's the engineering team at Palantir. And what are they doing? No one said cheese or say or smile or anything like that. They're looking. They're looking and they're smiling because they're watching the master at work. They're learning. Their game is getting better. This is the joy of it. I got my ass kicked by Kasparov. This is great. Let's watch him do it to other people and see how it pulls off. Volatiles, I love them. There's a spectrum to these builders, though. There's a spectrum to these builders. And I want to tell you one last story, and then we'll talk about stables and volatiles, I swear. I want to talk about Stefan. Stefan was at that startup that you've never heard of. Stefan was a contractor. We just brought him in to fix some database stuff. And he walked in the door, and he looked around after about a day, and he's like, what's that smell? Can you smell that? And what he realized is that we were never gonna ship. He's like, this is the smell of a product never shipping. So Stefan, who is a contractor who we're paying to fix the database stuff, goes like, hey, Bob, meet me in the ping pong room in a half hour. And Bob, who's an intern, goes, great. So Bob runs over to the intern into the ping pong room, and Stefan goes, listen, we're gonna work in this ping pong room until it's done. And Bob, who is an intern, goes like, great. What does done mean? He's like, I don't know, we're gonna figure it out when we go. And they started. And about 2.5 weeks later, half of engineering was in that ping pong room. They'd been there for 3 days straight. It smelled, because there was a lot of people in there growing, and they gave a demo of our product, a product that was scheduled to be done in about 6 months, a working demo of the product, 2.5 weeks. And we clapped. We're like, all right, 1.0, this is great. And we were so happy to see this vision, this thing that we were building done. We were just clapping. But there were a couple people sitting in the corner who were like, they're wondering, what did Stefan do to get all that stuff done? Like, what corners did he cut? What duct tape did he use to actually get it done? Because I feel like I'm going to be paying that bill when we start to actually get this out there. And they were right. Our first big deployment, a year later, Stefan was long gone, and we started to scale up the users, and it just came crumbling down. And Stefan was on his next gig, and it was maddening. So, who is Stefan? Stefan. He's a volatile. Now, we're going to talk about archetypes here. And archetypes are fun because they paint things are black and white. These are archetypes. You're going to start to resonate with them. The reality of these archetypes is you're probably somewhere in between. So I'm going to be talking in generalizations, but there's nuance here. Stable engineers, or stable humans, if you will, they happily work with direction. They appreciate there appears to be a plan. They like schedules. These are great people. They play very nice with others. They really value efficiently run, no drama teams. I love this part of this talk because people start nodding. They're like, yeah, that's me. That's totally me. I love it. They calmly assess risks. They carefully work to mitigate failure, however distant or improbable it might be. They tend to generate process because they know process creates predictability and it creates measurability. If you can't measure it, you can't fix it. There's this behavior in research. There's human behavior. Research shows that if a consumer is given a choice between a good, like $20 toaster, or a $20 Euro toaster, and a somewhat better toaster, same features basically, they go and they obviously will go and change it. So, but if you go and you put a third choice into the mix, so a marginally better toaster, nothing has changed in the $20 to $30 toaster. What will happen is, what consumers tend to do is they tend to go and do that thing. They tend to go and pick the marginally better one. The phenomena is called salience in decision-making, which is fancy word speak for when someone's attention is differentially focused towards one portion of the environment, the information in the environment receives disproportionately more decision-making power. So what does this mean? It means that the stable decision here is to choose kind of the mediocre toaster. Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense, right? We wouldn't go far as a species if we were constantly making it up everything as we go. The unknown isn't scary. It's just there's not really a reference point for the individual to base its decision on. But there are times where we need a different decision maker. He or she is very important. We need a volatile. Volatiles prefer to find strategy rather than follow it. They really, really don't like to be told what to do. They cannot conceive of failing, and they find a thrill in risk. Let's just go for it. Let's figure it out. Let's get it done. They often don't build predictable or stable things, but they just build a lot of stuff. They're constantly building things. They are often only reliable if it's in their best interest. One of my favorite moves with volatiles is the following free management tip here. I walk up and I say, hey, Bob, there's this really hard problem. I know you can't do it, but it's a hard problem, and I'm going to have Mary look at it. That's cool. You can't do this. I don't think you're kind of up to it, but we're going to have Mary take a look at it, and don't worry about it, okay? Because I know you're busy and you got a lot on your plate. They usually jump at that. They're like, Mary's going to do it. I can figure that out. Let's go for it. They see volatiles see working with others time-consuming, and onerous. They prefer to work in small, autonomous teams. And perhaps most importantly, and most damningly, they could care less how you feel. They're jerks. Now, they're not really, they're not like this guy, the inventor of the transistor jerks. It's just how you feel about it, how you feel about working with the team, or whatever the problem is that you're having with them. It's just kind of low on the priority list. And they're prioritizing other more interesting things. Now, if you give a volatile the choice between a $20 toaster and a $30 toaster, what you usually end up with is flying toasters. How many of you know what this is? How many? No one? Really? That's a first? No one? After dark? We got one. Okay, I have to explain it. You're like, who is this crazy guy with his flying toasters? Okay, so there's this company called After Dark. Actually, no, I want to do something different. What's your name, sir? Mike? Can you bring it down all the way? Thank you. Okay, Mike, you're now a venture capitalist, all right? And I have this idea for a company. And all you have to do is you have to go funded or not funded, all right? So that's all you have to do. I'm going to pitch you on an idea. It's called flying toasters. Now, don't fund yet. Hold, keep it down. I got to give you the idea first. Okay, so what this idea is, a piece of software, and what it does is when you're not at your computer, these flying toasters show up on the screen. Okay? It's called a screensaver, right? Okay, so these adorable flying toasters are going to show up on your screen when you're not there. I know, pretty cool. Funded yet? No? Hold on. I got to tell you more. We're going to have music when it's played there, and also there'll be a preference to go and change how dark the toast is. So you want dark toast or light toast. That'll be a preference inside of there. So you're going to fund me? Is this a good idea? Yeah, you want to fund me or not? Yes or no? He's investing in me, the crazy person. They made millions of dollars. This is an absurd idea. It's software that does something when you're not there. What is it? Okay, now, in its defense, it is saving your screen, but you could save the screen by making it go black, right? This is a crazy idea. Sometimes we want our toasters to fly. It's amazing. Millions of dollars on this. If I pitched you on this idea, I can't believe they did this. It's absurd. It's brilliant. I researched the company. His name is Berkeley Systems. Did it. And I don't know these people, but it's Wes Boyd and John Blades are the co-founders. And what they did after they sold Berkeley Systems to this other company, they funded MoveOn.org, which was one of the first political action groups in the US. This was a big deal back then. These are volatiles. These are people who are going to think up the crazy idea, and you're going to that's absurd. We do not need to be able to change the toast color on the screensaver. Now, here's the thing. These two humans, our stables and our volatiles, there's some allergic reactions between these two folks. These guys and gals hate each other. They don't get along at all. Now remember, we're talking about archetypes here. They don't get along at all. The volatiles believe the stables are slow, lazy, predictable, political, bureaucratic. The stables believe the volatiles hold nothing sacred. They do whatever the hell they want. Company, team, product, be damned. Take that picture right there. It's a good one. Yeah, I know, isn't it? If you're sure, it's a beautiful typeface. Everyone's right. Everyone's right. There's always going to be this fundamental tension between these two sets of humans. And there's going to be people that are going to be playing in the middle, but this tension, this fundamental conflict is a good thing. You want this in your team. You want this in your company. If you're planning on a team, on a company, on a product evolving, you're going to need to build a place where both of these personality types can thrive. Now, the reward for shipping 1.0 can be a bit of a curse. We talked about these before: Borland, Netscape, and Apple. Each of these companies, I would suggest, started with a volatile. At Borland, It was Philippe Kahn, who they had amazing IDEs, and then they went on to battle Microsoft, and that didn't go so well. Funnily, then Netscape invented the browser. They battled Microsoft, and that didn't go so well. And then, you can see a theme here in my career, by the way. And then you have Apple, obviously, with Steve Jobs, which the original Mac, the Apple II on the back. Each of these companies, it took a handful of volatiles to say, hey, we want to bring a new thing into the world. But at each of these companies, there's a very interesting point that occurred. When that first product got out the door, that 1.0 got out the door, whether it was Netscape Navigator, or whether it was the Apple II, or whether it was Pascal. See, what happens when you get that company out the door, you get that 1.0 out the door, what happens is the volatiles become stables. It gets really strange. These companies, they go and they win it, and they get the 1.0 out the door, and they suddenly start to protect the crown jewels, as we say it. We say, hey, this is the one thing that we've done so well. This is where all of the money is coming in, so we've got to protect it. And you see these original volatiles turned into stables. This is this is awful. It killed most of those companies. New volatiles show up. New volatiles come in because they're like, oh my God, you're at Slack, you're at Apple, you're at Netscape, you're at these places. They see the success of the 1.0, and they start to do what they thought they were supposed to do, is be volatile. They start to try new things, and they get shut down. And they say, no. We have this thing over here, this 1.0, the crown jewels. You cannot disrupt that. We have to protect it. MBAs show up, lawyers show up, and they start to put structure around it. But the thing that actually got them to be the 1.0, they start to try to kill. So the volatiles, the next generation of volatiles, leave to go somewhere else. This is how companies die. I say this really mean thing about these, and my wife gets mad at me whenever I say it, but I'm going to say the line, what a yard sale of mediocrity. Oh, okay, it's all right. They're making a shit ton of money, right? Now, there's actually another talk I can do. I can say why these companies are great, but I want you to tell me what is something that HP or IBM has done that has affected you. That is you're oh my God, this is amazing. This is a thing that they've done. They've generated a lot of revenue, and they obviously have a huge amount of infrastructure that they're building. But what is that thing that has really changed, the big change for humans? Microsoft, I would say, actually, Xbox. Something seems volatile about Xbox. It seems like they're still inventing there. But when you go and you look at these three companies, the companies that succeed are the ones that are invested in both the stables and the volatiles. Borland died. It's still around. But Philippe Kahn got forced out, and he went, after he left Borland, he invented a little thing called the camera phone. Maybe you've heard of it. Probably a couple in your pocket right now. That's what he did. That's the next thing he did after that. He's like, look, I need to be able to take a picture of my new baby with the computer, and he invented the camera phone. This is the next thing he did after this. Netscape tried lots of different things, got bought by AOL, which is a fate worse than death. And Apple, I would argue, 97, when Steve Jobs came back, they were about to shut the thing down. They brought back the original volatile, and he did exactly what he was always done, which is kind of mix things up and reinvented the company. My question to you is, do you or do you not want flying toasters? What's the actual issue here? I was on stage. I was not at Apple anymore when they announced not this plug, but this plug. Do you remember this? I was watching the keynote, and I was just like, oh my God, I'm going to have to buy everything all over again. I have to throw away all these plugs and buy the new plugs. I was mad. It's actually a pretty good design because it goes in either way, it has power, it does all these other things like headphones and stuff, and it works everywhere on the planet as long as you have a couple of adapters. Yeah. So is the actual issue here when we go and we worry about Apple like changing plugs on us, is Apple a bunch of greedy bastards? Is that what's going on here? There was a lot of buzz about this, I think, a couple of weeks ago around this. This was the removal of the headphone jack on the iPhone 7. We lost our minds. It was like, what are you doing here? This is not a new move. Apple has been doing this to us for decades. September 7th, 2005. Remember this one? This was a nice piece of hardware. This was the last hard drive iPod. It was had a beautiful brushed aluminum. And Steve Jobs got on stage on September 7th, 2005. Oh, and by the way, we couldn't keep them in stock. We were selling them you couldn't get one of these. He got on stage and he's like, "We're killing it." And we were like, "What?" And the MBAs, the business folks, just lost their mind. I mean, they were like, we could have had whatever the new one was and this and sold it. He's like, "Nope." Year and a half of the market was gone. We couldn't even keep it in stock. And what he did during this presentation, when he was showing it, is he showed the competition at the beginning and at the end of this iPod. Was it the Mini? The Mini. And of course, at the beginning, everything looked like crap. And at the end, they all started to look like the iPod Mini. Rather than giving time to the competition to catch up, he changed the game. And he said, "We're just going to throw this away. And we're going to introduce the iPod," I think it was the Nano. The first one, the first flash one. This is clearly not a stable person at work. This is clearly someone who is a little volatile. And they did the same thing in the battery business. You remember the 17-inch MacBook Pro? It was huge, right? It was like the size of a pizza box. I loved it. Lots of keyboard space and screen. And they got rid of the removable battery, and all the nerds lost their minds. We're like, "My God, I got to be able to replace the battery because I'm going to be on an 18-hour flight at some point in the future, I'm sure." They replaced the battery because, and by the way, got rid of a multi-million-dollar business in their battery business because what they were doing is they were figuring out how to do those cloth batteries. They were figuring out how can we jam as much battery into a small space as possible. Why were they doing this? Not the 17-inch MacBook. They were saying, we want to figure out how to get as much battery into, 2 years later, the phone. Brilliant. Apple does not want to become stable. This is the thing that scares the hell out of them, is to turn into one of those companies, and it's just this big behemoth that is just generating the same product year after year. You don't want to become stable either. You need in your team, in your company, for your product, you need both of these personalities to exist. Stables are there to remind you about reality and to define process whereby large groups of humans can be coordinated to actually get work done. These are amazing human beings, the ones that can weaponize companies. Your stables bring predictability, credibility, and repeatability to your execution. There's a reason they put him in charge when Steve passed away. This is the best operator on the planet that I'm aware of. You need to build a world where they can exist. You need a volatile. You need to have this ability inside of your team as well. They're there to remind you that nothing lasts. They consider their mission in life to replace that which is inefficient, boring, and uninspired. You need to create a corner of the building where they can disrupt, and everyone is clear about the value of this disruption. You need to build a world where they can both thrive. You need to build an appreciation of these different skill sets. I spend a lot of my job mediating disruptions between these two, but what I want is I want the volatiles to come over to the stables office and to look up over the wall and be like, "Wow, it is so clean in here. Everything is so tidy. Your pencils are in there, and oh my, graph paper. How do you think in here? It's too tidy." And I want the stables to walk over to wherever the volatiles are sitting that week and go like, "What a mess. This is awful in here. what is all this craziness? There's trash on their table. This is awful. Is that a flying toaster? Because that's cool. Nature abhors a vacuum. This is one of the hardest things you're going to ever have to do, is choose to throw something. I think I skipped ahead one. Back one. Yeah. Is to choose to throw something away. You call it tech debt, and you have all these things you have to do. Like, you got this thing that just kind of feels like this bloated, monolithic piece of Python crap, and I get it. There's a point, and it's really hard to do, where you actually just have to, like, we're going to delete it. We're deleting it on Friday. It's got to be running again on Monday. Who's in? Let's go. It's scary. It's hard. It's easy to say. It's incredibly hard to do. But nature abhors a vacuum. You have to be able to throw away things you cherish. Another thing you want to be doing inside of a team is figuring out how to give your team white space, blank slates. There was this, when Steve came back to Apple, he got rid of sabbaticals. Sabbaticals, it was basically you got 3 months off if you'd been there 6 years. And he got rid of it because what would happen is people were there 6 years, they took their sabbatical, they came back, and they quit. This makes no sense. You've got to be free. A lot of the teams need to have that ability to go and invent a new thing. What we did at Palantir for folks that were there 2 years, they got a month. And they got together with a small group of teams, and they could build whatever they wanted. 1 month, no guidelines. They could build Angry Birds if they wanted to do it. They didn't build Angry Birds. We got 3 new product lines out of the blitz, out of this blitz of people going in. They didn't finish it, but they got a prototype done. It was something we weren't planning on doing, and it just showed up. That is the power of a blank slate. You need to have equal representation of investments, equal representation of investments in both these stables and volatiles. Both of these sets of humans need to be in the building. If you just have stables, a whole lot gets done, but it's not inspired. It's just vanilla getting stuff done. If you just have volatiles, it's just crazy town, and nothing gets done. But you want to figure out what that balance is between the two. When Steven walked into my startup, what did he smell? What he smelled was stagnation. Like, this is never going to get done. This is not interesting to me because I want to go build stuff. To builders, stagnation is death. Humans are bad at making decisions individually. This is the end result of coordinated, distributed decision-making across the planet. This is where stables have ruled and the volatiles are saying, screw it, this is not interesting, let's move on. Builders, wherever they might be on the planet, wherever they are on the planet, are in a unique position to change the world. And you want to go figure out how you can build a world where they can thrive. And that's you, Web Expo, because what I would like to see, what I want, is I want more flying toasters. Thank you very much. I think I'm right on time.